The first time my 8-year-old daughter looked terrified of me. She wasn't scared because of something I did. She was scared because she almost told me a secret. "Dad," she whispered while gripping my shirt so tightly her tiny hands were shaking. "Mom told me never to tell you who comes to our house when you're at work." I laughed for 1 second, thinking she was talking about a neighbor. Then I saw the tears filling her eyes. She leaned closer and whispered one more sentence. "He always goes into the basement, and Mom locks the door." In that moment, every thought in my head screamed the same thing. My wife was hiding another man, but I had no idea that opening that basement door would destroy everything I believed about my family. But before we start today's story, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Daniel Carter, and I'm 37 years old. Until that day, I honestly believed I had a happy family. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 11 years. We had one daughter, Lily, who had just turned 8. She was the brightest part of my life, smart, funny, curious. The kind of kid who still ran into my arms every evening when I came home from work. I worked as an electrical engineer. My schedule was demanding, and I often stayed late at the office. Emily worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, so she spent much more time with Lily than I did. For years, I never questioned anything. Emily seemed like the perfect wife, maybe too perfect. She always knew exactly what to say. She never argued much. She kept the house spotless and smiled whenever I walked through the front door. Looking back now, maybe I trusted appearances more than reality. A few days after Lily whispered that secret, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every conversation with Emily suddenly sounded different. Every smile looked rehearsed. Every phone call she took in another room made my stomach tighten. I hated myself for feeling suspicious, but I couldn't ignore what Lily had told me. That Friday, I came home earlier than usual. Emily looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, you're home early." "Meeting got canceled," I replied. She smiled, but only for a second. Then she glanced toward the basement door. It was such a tiny movement that I almost missed it. That night I asked casually, "Has anyone been visiting lately?" Emily didn't even hesitate. "No." "Why?" "I don't know. Just asking." She looked directly into my eyes. "No one comes here." Her answer came too quickly. Later that night, Lily climbed into bed beside me while Emily was taking a shower. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart? Are you mad at Mommy?" I forced a smile. "No." She looked down at her blanket. "I wasn't supposed to tell you." My heart sank. "You didn't do anything wrong." She leaned close enough that I could barely hear her. "He came again yesterday." I froze. "What did he look like?" "I don't know." "You saw him. He always wears a hat." "A hat, and Mom tells me to stay upstairs." My hands felt ice cold. "When does he leave?" "I never see him leave." Those words haunted me all night. Never see him leave. How could someone come into my house and never leave? The next Monday, I called my supervisor and told him I wasn't feeling well. Instead of going to work, I parked my truck 3 streets away and walked back through the neighborhood. At exactly 10:17 a.m., a black SUV pulled into my driveway. A man stepped out, tall gray jacket, black baseball cap. He looked around before Emily opened the front door. She didn't hug him. She didn't kiss him. She simply let him inside. My heart started pounding. I waited 5 minutes before quietly walking toward the house. The front door wasn't completely closed. I slipped inside without making a sound. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Then I heard footsteps from downstairs, the basement. I slowly walked toward the basement door. It was locked, just like Lily had said. I pressed my ear against it. Voices. A man's voice. Emily's voice. They were talking quietly. I couldn't understand the words. My entire body filled with rage. Every terrible possibility raced through my mind. Without thinking, I grabbed the emergency key hanging inside the laundry closet. Emily had forgotten I even knew where she kept it. The key slid into the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. One turn. Click. The door opened. I stormed down the stairs ready to catch my wife cheating. But halfway down, I stopped. Nothing I expected was waiting for me. There was no romantic dinner, no hidden bedroom, no affair instead. The basement looked like a medical storage room. Shelves lined every wall. Boxes filled with medicine, portable oxygen tanks, wheelchairs, medical files, and sitting quietly in a hospital bed at the far end of the room was an elderly man connected to an oxygen machine. He looked at me with frightened eyes. Emily spun around, her face turning completely white. "Daniel." The man beside her immediately stepped between us. "Please," he said calmly. "Don't scare him." I stared at Emily. "What is this?" She couldn't answer. My voice echoed through the basement. "Who is?" The old man slowly lifted his trembling hand. His eyes filled with tears. Then he whispered 5 words that made my blood run cold. "I'm your father, Daniel." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I stared at the frail old man lying in the hospital bed, then at Emily, then back at him again. "No," I whispered. "That's impossible." My father, Thomas Carter, had died when I was 14 years old. I had stood beside his grave. I had cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I had spent more than 20 years believing he was gone. So who was this man, and why was he in my basement? Emily slowly stepped toward me. Daniel, please let me explain before you walk away. I shook my head. Start talking. The man in the gray jacket introduced himself. My name is Michael Hayes. I'm an attorney. An attorney? That only confused me even more. Michael looked at Emily. You should tell him. Emily's hands were trembling. 3 years ago, I got a phone call from Michael. I'd never met him before. He told me someone wanted to speak to me, but he said I couldn't tell you until I understood everything. I laughed bitterly. So you decided lying to me was a better option? Tears rolled down her face. I know how terrible this looks. It doesn't look terrible, Emily. It is terrible. She lowered her head. Michael stepped forward. Your father never died, Daniel. I felt my knees weaken. What? The funeral you attended. The body inside that coffin wasn't your father's. I stared at him. You're insane. I wish I were. He opened a thick folder and handed me several old documents, birth records, medical reports, court files, photographs. Every page carried my father's name. Michael sighed. 23 years ago, your father witnessed a powerful financial fraud involving executives at the company where he worked. He agreed to testify, but before the trial, 2 witnesses disappeared. I looked at the old man. He closed his eyes. They warned me that your mother and you would be killed if I testified. My heart pounded. So, you ran? I didn't run. I was taken into protective custody. Michael nodded. The government arranged a staged death. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They believed your family would be safer if everyone thought Thomas Carter was dead. I remembered the closed casket. Back then, everyone said the accident had left his body impossible to recognize. I had accepted it because I was just a child, Michael continued. The program was supposed to end after the trial, but several people involved disappeared before they could be arrested. They couldn't guarantee his safety, so he stayed hidden. I looked at my father. If you were alive, why didn't you come back? His eyes filled with tears. I wanted to. Every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation, I asked. But every request was denied. His voice broke. They showed me photographs of you growing up. I watched my son become a man through pictures. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Then another question hit me. My mother. My father's face. I know. When was she told? Emily answered quietly. She wasn't. What? Michael nodded sadly. She was told Thomas had died. Only a handful of officials knew the truth. My legs felt weak, so my mother lived her whole life believing he was dead? Yes, I covered my face. My mother had passed away 5 years earlier. She had gone to her grave believing the love of her life had died. The thought shattered me. I suddenly turned toward Emily. You knew all this, she nodded. For 3 years. I couldn't hide my anger. You looked me in the eyes every single day. You let me believe my father was dead. She burst into tears. I promised I would never tell you until Michael gave permission. What permission? Michael answered. Thomas has terminal heart failure. The room fell silent. He has only weeks left. I looked toward the hospital bed. My father's breathing had become heavier. The authorities finally agreed that the remaining threat was gone. He wanted only one thing. Michael looked directly at me. To see his son before he died. Every ounce of anger inside me suddenly collided with grief. I walked closer. I looked into the eyes of the man I hadn't seen since I was 14. He looked older, broken, fragile, but his eyes, they were exactly the same. I remembered those eyes teaching me how to ride a bicycle, helping me build a treehouse, holding my shoulder after my first baseball game. Without realizing it, I started crying years. He nodded. I'm sorry, I failed you. No, you didn't. I wasn't there. You were forced not to be. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Then he slowly reached for my hand. I held it. For the first time in 23 years, a father held his son's hand again. Over the following days, everything changed. I took leave from work. Every morning I went downstairs with breakfast. We talked for hours. He told me stories I'd never heard, stories about meeting my mother, stories about my grandparents, stories about my childhood that only a father could remember. One afternoon he smiled. You still wrinkle your forehead when you're thinking. I laughed. You notice that? You've done it since you were 6. For the first time since discovering the truth, I smiled without forcing it. Lily also started spending time with her grandfather. She would read books beside his bed, draw pictures, tell silly jokes. His laughter filled the basement that had once felt so frightening. One evening Lily asked him, "Why did Mommy tell me not to tell Daddy?" He smiled sadly. "Because grown-ups sometimes make impossible choices." Emily looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to lie. I was terrified. I was afraid that if anyone found out too early, he'd disappear again." I took a deep breath. "I wish you'd trusted me." "I know." and I'll regret that decision for the rest of my life." I hugged her, not because everything was suddenly okay, but because I finally understood the weight she'd been carrying alone. 2 weeks later, my father asked me to wheel him outside. We sat in the backyard as the sun began to set. "I don't have much time." "Don't say that," he smiled. "Listen anyway." He looked toward Lily playing in the grass. "I lost half my life. Don't lose yours by holding on to anger. I already lost enough years. You still have your wife. You still have your daughter. Choose them every single day," were the last full sentences he ever spoke to me. 3 days later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. This time, I buried my father knowing the truth. This time, I wasn't burying unanswered questions. I was burying a man who had sacrificed everything to keep his family alive. Months later, I finally forgave Emily completely. Not because the lie didn't hurt. It did, more than she'll ever know. But love isn't only about honesty. Sometimes it's also about understanding the impossible decisions people make when they're trying to protect the ones they love. Today, our basement isn't locked anymore. We turned it into a family room. Lily's drawings cover one wall. My favorite chair sits in the corner. And every time I walk downstairs, I remember the day I opened that door expecting to uncover betrayal. But instead, I found the father I'd been mourning for more than 2 decades. If there's one lesson my story taught me, it's this. The truth is often far more complicated than our fears. The conclusions we jump to can destroy the people we love, while patience, compassion, and understanding can reveal a reality we never imagined. Before you let suspicion define your decisions, make sure you know the whole story. Because sometimes the person hiding a secret isn't betraying you. They're carrying a burden they never wanted to bear. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it touched your heart or kept you guessing until the very end, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves emotional mystery stories. I'll see you in the next one.